Hello and welcome to day 38 of 365 days towards racial change. I'm Tomlin's Nye back. Thanks for hanging out here on our daily quest to understand black life in America, understand white power, entitlement. We're talking about issues of slavery, racism, uh, economics, empowerment, black empowerment, being conscious, always keeping to the forefront, being aware of the black position in America. It's very important to keep that right up front in our minds. Today's segment, Code of Conduct, as I was going through it, I kind of struggled with it. And I think some of the issues, my issues of struggling with it would be complacency, that maybe I'm not as deeply immersed in the situation because people tend to gravitate towards comfort and ease and complacency. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but first let's talk about Mr. Claude Anderson, Dr. Claude Anderson. Very good guy. I'm going to do a segment on some of his biographical information so that you know more about him. Google him, YouTube him. He's around. He's still speaking. He spoke. There was a YouTube video of him speaking at some organized gathering, college graduates or something. But he's got a great message, and you really need to tune in. I'm not doing the best job at articulating these issues and these matters. But if you tune in, find him on YouTube, and you can also go to powernomics.com or .org, where you can find his books and other materials. He's also head of the Heritage Institute in Washington, D.C., and I know that he is working on some legal battles and issues for black folks, which I had no idea was going on. To get reparations and to glean some of the things blacks have lost just through slavery and Jim Crow and just recognition of being prevented from participating in wealth and resources. So that's a little bit of his message, but again, you've got to go to those places in YouTube, and you can find more about him. I read 3 of his books that were very powerful in my life that I use to reference to. It helps get this conversation going here on racial change. And the first book I read of his was A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. I want you to get these books and read them cover to cover. It's enough. There's so much I didn't know about what blacks didn't have. White history. Just they like to drop that slavery issues and being compromised as a race and all those things on us, and they never. White history just struggles to move blacks past and any of that pejorative state, that negative state of being black, and it's fleshed out. It realizes itself all the way into here and now in the 21st century. So that's a good book to start with, to wake you up and get us on the same page about these issues. And he takes it to another level: Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice. And in there, he demonstrates a lot of the dynamics. If we can extract our moral sense of right and wrong and our emotions from this issue and get it more towards economic benefits and deficits that are going on, and this dynamic in the country, how blacks are kind of this economic fodder, this just still being used in a slave sense. If we can get the conversation more around those issues, we can find some basis to move collectively forward, unified, to get access to wealth and resources, to be taken seriously politically and economically in America. But right now we are just intense consumers for other races that are actually hostile and competing with blacks here in America. And finally, this book really articulates that argument much better than I can. Powernomics, National Plan to Empower Black America. And a lot of that book takes the blueprint from whites, Asians, Hispanics, Arabs, and talks about how they are able to come together, unite, and they're successful in staking a claim in America, a small one, just a little foothold that they need, and then they grow and expand and flourish and practice unity and nationalism to make themselves stronger and to make themselves be in a better position than blacks in America. Past videos will talk more about that. We got a whole year. We're going to get into those issues again, no doubt, of how these groups are in competition with us and how they are engaged in plans and devices to supplant blacks in America, if they haven't already. You need to know that these books, his works there, those written works, his goal was to see some national action happening by the year 2005. This is now the year 2019. So I'm just getting the information. I had not heard of him. We have a mutual friend, and that's how I heard of him, and that's what lit a fire. And I hope that is what happens with all blacks. Once some truth gets mixed in there, then we can start working together. But right now we have our occasional successes in sports and entertainment, talk shows and game shows and things like that, but no national seriousness about blacks. It's like we just are here to make people laugh, but we're not encouraging critical thought and the seriousness of who we are and our potential. If we can get rid of black in the adjectival position, black achievement, black this, black that, as though, we're a different kind of human species on the earth. Further resource, we want to talk about Uncle Tom's Cabin. Now, this is a fictional work, Harriet Beecher Stowe, female white abolitionist. You hear all those adjectives to describe her and whatnot. But we look at that work to get it's a fictional work about white power and entitlement, reigning and exercising those privileges over black slavery, black vulnerability in America. But from that work comes stereotypes. A lot of theater comes from that, and it has impacted media and how the perception of whites and blacks in America. So we get, every once in a while, we have a little story time. I try to elevate it a little bit, but the story, there's, the sadness, a lot of if you could think about old black spiritual, that's where some of that comes from, because it's just a depressing onward journey of blacks in America. Some communities to think about, hashtag us too, hashtag USTOO, and black enough, I think, .com. And I'll admit I don't go to these places much. I've got so much on my plate. I think a lot of blacks do, as we're navigating this oppressive landscape, and we want to get comfortable with and kind of find a place to rest. And so, having some energy to be involved in other communities as we're trying to hold down a job, raise children, hold a family, keep a roof over our head, on and on and on, and on top of that, navigate discrimination and oppression in Black America. And it can seem at times that that is not the case, that, even this series of videos over the course of this year is like an overkill in the face of apparent peace and rest and the cessation temporarily of some of the gross criminal activities that whites have committed against blacks. So in the absence of that, we can be lulled into a sense of security and complacency, which is kind of what I want to, good segue for what I want to talk about today in our last few minutes is this segment's entitled Code of Conduct, and it's what blacks are going to need collectively if blacks are going to have an impact in voting, have an economic impact, create centralized black business, industries, and economies. We're the only group that just sacrifices our disposable income, that income that's left over after we've given rent monies to white powers and establishments and landowners. Blacks don't generally own land. We rent. We pay the mortgages for these organizations. We're prevented from fully participating. If we are rising up, establishing ourselves, we run the risk of being alienated, quarantined, marginalized once our patronage, in a sense, finds out that we're black. To be a successful black business person has its challenges at the outset, even if we're going to produce a superior product or service, or then produce and do that even at a lower cost, just so we can have some economic commerce and discourse in America. Things like that still go on today. Just saw an article, South Carolina using, still kind of stuck in Jim Crow segregation and still pilfering the resources of the black community that's already stressed and limited, and through all kinds of devious means. In this case, this article was about law enforcement and how law enforcement's taken advantage, and that's the problem. Like now, in that case, that's law enforcement just going in, pulling people over for no reason, doing all that kind of mischievous, underhanded stuff. But also think about, for our code of conduct discussion, I think blacks are still engaged in some of the more depressed communities with crime and drugs and violence and things like that. giving giving white power, entitlement, privilege, that opportunity to come in to those neighborhoods, find this illegal activity, and stimulate that white system. The blacks do not benefit from questionable, deviant criminal behavior in their neighborhoods. We don't hold each other accountable. We don't aggressively do that. You look at the communities that are surpassing us, Hispanics, Asians, whites. Oh, they've got their places um, of challenging lifestyles. I think for whites, think of Kensington, Philadelphia, could be an area. You know, um, there's other places I'm sure where whites have their depressed, crime-ridden communities. Specifically, well, I spent time in North Carolina, and there's white communities that have, I'm sure every community has their challenged sections, but it's for blacks where, we obviously should not have certain behaviors prevailing in our space. We don't live as though we are embattled. We live as though we're embattled with one another, but we don't live as though we're embattled and oppressed by the other races, whites, Asians, Hispanics, Arabs, specifically. Maybe it could be because those races have their little stores, they're present in law enforcement. Um, we don't see that. They come into our communities, but they don't live in those communities that they're doing all this economic discourse in. They have their gated communities. They have their exclusive communities. Their communities are cordoned off with language and cultural barriers towards black folks being up in there. So we don't see that. So blacks, we need a certain code of conduct. We need a level of accountability with one another, uh, so that every black, at least we're not volunteering for a white system that's killing us, incarcerating us, and taking advantage of our vulnerabilities. A lot of people say that this president is this and that, and I've gone back and forth with our current president. But during his speech, State of the Union, he held up a few blacks who used their incarceration experience to enrich others, and they were guests of the president and stuff. A lot of big honors and a lot of laudable things going on um, during the president's speech. Um, but then my mind is like, man, it's so easy to find some blacks doing the right thing within that context. Uh, you know, I was I try not to be too pessimistic about his intentions, but I'm glad he showed some recognition of blacks. You know, so is there still a problem? I think I talked about complacency a little bit, and that I can make these videos in relative peace, and I have my own space and stuff, and I'm keeping the rent paid, the lights are on. I'm warm. We got snow coming down like crazy outside today, and it's enough to say, man, what are you jammed up about? What more do you want? You know, Um, First, I want to be aware and stay focused and awake in American culture and know that I'm still the last person people sit with on the train. I still get looks. The default um, impression that the white community gives me when I'm out in public is that I'm a criminal and I'm marginalized. That I should not be speaking up, exercising any authority or power. You know, I'm a menace. Therefore, I need to be look that much more non-threatening out in public. These are real things that still exist, and I can't say just because I can come and go in this space and that I have this time that I'm not embattled in this. You know, part of the deception is the peace. There's deception lies within the apparent peace that reigns in my life, and I'm showing a lot of Black lives. It's like, oof, you know, um, I'm experiencing some peace. Therefore, there's no need to get overboard and talk about racism and being barred from wealth and resources in this extremely rich nation. You know, that's not appropriate, and we need to have a sense of urgency and be consistently wary of the intentions of other groups towards blacks. Give you an example. I'm studying um, the stock market, and Warren Buffett's name is big. You don't go anywhere in the stock market circles, without hearing his name and Berkshire Hathaway and the history, you know, because he's successful and um, he's the guy to emulate as far as success um, in the stock market and things like that. Now, but one of his things is he's always every um, financial move needs to go through stringent acid test uh, before he even considers uh, engaging with that potential opportunity, financial opportunity, and he does it every time, and he stays on it. You say, man, dude, you're a kabillion zazillionaire. What do you, man? Close your eyes and just go for one. No, he's 100% because he understands greed. He understands deception. He understands human behavior, human nature. He understands that he must turn over use every bit of his uh, decades of experience on every single company that he's looking at, because in there could be a cancer, there could be some deception, and he's got to root it out, you know, and that's how blacks need to approach their existence in America. You know, we were forcibly brought here. We were forcibly put to labor, murdered and subjected to all kinds of exploitation. That doesn't go away overnight. Um, so our politicians and our game show hosts and our athletes, those are good, I guess, accomplishments. We got law enforcement. We got people that have black people that have engaged in all aspects of American life. I'm reading the book now. It's got 4,000 Black first things in there. So we don't lack a sense of participation in all aspects of American life, but it doesn't mean that the war is over. It doesn't mean that we've arrived. It doesn't mean that um, our color is not probably the first issue with um, how we engage American life. So our code of conduct, we don't. I don't need to. I don't really need to tell you what we should do. I'll just briefly say, let's not make ourselves targets for law enforcement. Stay away from drugs, alcohol, and violence. I say abstain totally because we need to be present at all times. We need to be raising our children, on and on. We know what to do. We don't lack for knowing. We lack for doing here in America. We need to be aware of the predatory races and how they feel about us. I don't think we are feeling that enough. Um, we need to resist the temptation to cast off the mundane and the ordinary. The majority of every person's life on the planet is mundane and ordinary. And Black folks may be the first folks to give up, going through those dry places and those dry spaces in life. I know I do. I used to really faint on the way. I'd get to a place I'm like, this is just boring. This is normal. It's redundant or whatever. And I would go try to drum up my own excitement in life because I'm being bombarded with the occasional athlete star, with the occasional game show host star, movie stars, all these big, bright, uh, supposed Black examples of how I should be. When the truth is, life is normal. Life it can be consistent, steady. Doesn't have to have these volatile upheavals and lows and highs and things like that. Um, so I need to be part of my self ministry to myself. It is to know that life is going to show up and I'm going to be challenged anyway. But I don't have to rush off into it and expend energy and resources and then put myself further in a vulnerable position. Some of those things are going to come. Life's going to come at us anyway. But I need not encourage and give opportunity to other people and cultures that are hostile to my achievement and my success. So the code of conduct is we know what to do, not to do, and all this stuff. The code of conduct is sure and secure. What we need to do is start doing it. Maybe if we can't um, explicitly or directly go to another Black person and challenge a behavior or attitude, well, then maybe we can just walk away from that experience. Consistently be found apart from negativity and situations that are going to compromise the black community. Always be absent from that experience. Boycott liquor stores. Stop the drug use. I live in a state that's has legal marijuana. So, and the blacks just ran to that. That's a whole culture to that. But we're wigging out. I'm not going to get a whole lot of critical thought. I'm not going to get a whole lot of achievement from a mind strung out on drugs. So that's today's segment, code of conduct, very important, and we're going to check in with that consistently. We're not going to lapse into complacency and believe that everything is all right. We've got a long way to go, and it's naive to think that these attitudes don't still exist and prevail just because we enjoy some peace and comfort and have a space to be quiet. There's an out there that's still going on, and we need to combat it the best we can. I'm Tom Nyback. That's 365 days towards racial change. Thanks. Y'all see you again real soon.